Lately, there's been a lot of talk about Super Poly and whether or not the card should get banned again. So I decided to make this video to give my opinion as well as my theory on what could happen to Super Poly. Without any more intros, let's get into this, shall we? Alright, let's start with the big question. Do I think Super Poly will get banned? No, I don't think Super Poly will get banned. And my argument is that the TCG favors cards that help players go second. You might wonder, how can I prove that? Well, let me show you how the TCG supports cards that go second and why they've gone down this route. Okay, to prove my point, let's go back in time to 2018, aka the worst year of Yu-Gi-Oh! Ever. This year was not just known for FTKs, but unbreakable boards were at an all-time high. This is thanks to Goki Extra Link, as not only were you locked out of the extra monster zones because of how Master Rule 4 worked, but breaking their board was impossible. The Nightmare monsters provided protection from battle, card effect, and targeting, so regular board breakers we had at the time like Imperm, Raigeki, and Interrupted Kaiju's Slumber were useless. The only cards that players could use were Spear Mode, Lava Golem, Rivalry, Gozen, Evenly Matched, and Kaijus. However, these cards had their own problems. With Spear Mode, Lava Golem, and Kaijus, you had no way of searching them turn 2. Also, Spear Mode and Lava Golem would eat up your normal summon. As for Rivalry, Gozen, and Evenly Matched, Goki players adapted and started including Trigate Wizard, who was an Omnigate, making it so that now you needed 2 copies of either of those cards. So you can see how bad the game had become during that time. And it wasn't just the players, but the TCG noticed this too and decided to make a drastic change. On the September 2018 ban list, the TCG not only banned Nightmare Goblin to stop easy access of the Extra Link, but they also decided to unban Super Poly. This was a sign that now the TCG would start trying harder to balance the power between turn 1 and 2 by supporting cards that would help players when they go second. They didn't just stop there by unbanning Super Poly. In 2019, they eventually put it to 3. Then they made cards like Dark Ruler No More and Nibiru. Next in 2022, they unbanned Change of Heart, which is kind of a board breaker. And finally, most recently, they made a new Super Poly target in the form of Garua. Also, as the time of recording this video, they didn't ban Mystic Mine, or even Limited for that matter, cause I guess they see it as a going second option. I don't know, that's just my theory on that. When you look at these actions, it's pretty obvious what they're trying to do. In fact, when it comes to Garua in particular, we all knew what they intended the moment we read its material. Garua's purpose was to help players come back to 2 tier 0 decks, sprites, and Tearlaments that were in Power of the Elements. I mean, it's proven even more because of the fact they were all in the same set. Though, Garua may have done more harm than good. The biggest problem with Super Poly now is that every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can get Super Poly'd, and it also makes it more potent as a turn 1 interruption, as you can remove 2 of your opponent's monsters, possibly get a draw from Garua, and maybe OTK them if Garua attacks directly. These 2 cards provide way too much advantage, so I can see why people now want Super Poly banned. However, my suggestion / theory is that I don't think Super Poly will be banned, but I think Garua will get banned. Now, I know that sounds like a ban Borreload Savage Dragon type deal, but my argument is that Super Poly is only as broken as the targets it has. Before Garua, everyone can agree that Super Poly was more fair as it only worked in certain situations when the main targets were just Mud Dragon, Starving Venom, and Dragostapelia. But thanks to Garua being so generic, Super Poly became way too broken out of nowhere. And I mean, how many decks in Yu-Gi-Oh! Fit Garua's requirements? I would say like 75%. I gotta admit, as much as Super Poly is needed as a board breaker, it can't be that powerful. This is where my theory comes in on what Konami will do, and my idea is that maybe a year or so, whenever they're done selling Power of the Elements, they'll ban Garua instead so that way they can keep Super Poly as a board breaker, but it won't be that powerful anymore. I mean, all the arguments that people are saying now for Super Poly to get banned can also apply to Garua, as it's the card that made it broken to begin with. So to all you folks who want Super Poly banned now, why not go with this solution instead? Now, some of you might say, what if Konami makes another generic Super Poly target like Garua, resulting in this problem again? My answer to that is, they might not after what Garua has shown. This does sound like the Verte argument, where people thought Konami should stop printing fusion spells that send from the deck to the graveyard, but the difference is that Konami was already designing generic fusion monsters around Super Poly, cards like Guardian Chimera and the Trishula fusion, where they're generic, but they can't be summoned by Super Poly. The difference between designing cards around Super Poly and Verte is that with Verte, you're hurting future fusion archetypes that rely on fusion spells. Meanwhile, with Super Poly, Yu-Gi-Oh! Doesn't really need generic fusion monsters, and if Konami wants to make generic fusions, then they'll make it like Guardian Chimera. So, to put it in short, Konami can easily design around Super Poly because of how archetype-based the game is. And if they wanted to make another Super Poly target, I would assume they would make it more format-dependent, like the Guard Dragon fusion monster requires Link monsters. So, to put this video in short, I'm basically playing devil's advocate here. While I don't think Super Poly itself is the problem, I think having a target really generic like Garua is the problem, since now every deck in Yu-Gi-Oh! Can get affected by Super Poly and it's good going turn 1 as well. That's all I have to say about this. Remember, this is just my opinion / suggestion, so just take this with a grain of salt. Maybe they'll ban Super Poly in the future, but we'll have to wait and see. Anyways, I hope you guys enjoyed the video and I hope you subscribe for more. Thanks for watching and goodbye.